Fuld, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. Take us through it the last several hours since this attack. We saw some of the images, some of the lights, the ballistic missiles lighting up the sky. What were you thinking? What were you feeling when that moment happened?
Thank you for bringing me into this show. So, what was I thinking? What was I feeling? Well, there was an ominous feeling as I was sitting out to dinner with a friend of mine, and we understood as information was trickling in that there was going to be an attack. And we had gotten some news about this in the late afternoon, but I didn't understand just how imminent it was. So, when this began happening, people were actually running from their seats, and that's exactly what I did. I left where I was sitting and I was trying to make it home before the attack really broke out, but unfortunately that was not the case. So what I had to do was actually run into an underground parking facility, which is a pretty safe place when there are ballistic rocket attacks here, and that's because it's so deep underground. So I was under there with a number of people for about an hour actually, and this was a little bit of an unusual attack because typically when you have to run for safety, you need to stay for about 10 minutes to let that shrapnel fall down from the skies. But this time, the Home Front Command told us all to shelter in place until told otherwise. So that was about an hour for us.
Yeah, and we're seeing some of these images of what you potentially saw there on the ground in Tel Aviv, some of these lights. And I think people maybe outside of Israel don't understand that the Iron Dome, a common thing, a daily almost occurrence for it. Can you compare and contrast what happened in April to what happened today? Because it was double the amount of ballistic missiles from Iran. Can you compare and contrast to what you felt over the last few weeks, what you felt back in April?
Back in April, the attack was very frightening because it was happening in the wee hours of the morning. So for those of us who were awake for that, myself included, it was a very silent, kind of scary feeling. Whereas this afternoon, people were out, people were about, and people had a little bit more ability to rely on one another for comfort and for protection. So I think that the difference between the April attack and today was that more people were able to experience it at the same time. And perhaps since this is the second time around and we are a little bit more accustomed to dealing with long range missiles than we were some months back, people were a little bit better prepared, but still the panic, the chaos is still very much present. And at the same time, as soon as everybody was released, very much in the Israeli spirit, people went right back into their activities. I saw people jumping back on their bicycles. Clearly, most people were trying to get home after they were released from being held up wherever they were. But the Israeli spirit is pretty strong. So as soon as people can jump back into it, they do.
Yeah, and you mentioned it was like an hour in that parking garage, kind of hiding and being safe as well. Were you concerned that it could last even longer?
I was definitely concerned that it would last longer. People within that hour were already discussing how they wanted to get to their homes. They wanted to be able to use their own restrooms. I was a little bit concerned about not having water. I typically like to go out with a water bottle on me just in case I'm going to get held up in some kind of an attack or something like that. And today I didn't have that with me. So there were some questions that I had about how long we were going to be in there and if I had the necessary documentation on me that I might need in an event that I wasn't going to be able to make it back to my home.
Yeah, that is a terrifying reality that you have to live with on a daily basis. And take me through it, because we are on October the 1st, October the 7th, a very traumatic day, a very emotional day. Is there a sense that this anniversary is coming up? Do you feel a different sense knowing that we're less than a week until the anniversary of that deadly Hamas attack back on October the 7th?
Do I feel a different sense now versus when?
I'm just saying, like, we know that the anniversary is coming. Is there a feeling of that imminent coming of the anniversary? Because I imagine it's going to be a very emotional day in Israel. Do you already get that sense just a week out?
Absolutely. Everyone that I know is already discussing which programs they're going to go to, where they're going to be, which loved ones that they're going to surround themselves with, because it's going to be a very traumatic day for so many people for so many different reasons. First of all, this country has dealt with a lot of injured, with a lot of deaths via the army. And one thing that I said on a news program, really, I believe it was actually October 7th that I said this, was that this is a very small country. And a journalist asked me on the air how I thought this was going to affect the nation. And I said, I believe every single person in this country is going to be affected. This country has 9 million people, and there's a draft, which means that every single person in the army has not only family, they have community, they have friends. There are people that I know who've lost their lives in the war that were a barista at a cafe. So every single person is touched by this. This. I don't think people quite understand how small the nation of Israel is. It's about the size of New Jersey. So imagine an attack on the state of New Jersey. There would be a hell of a lot of people that would feel that. And it didn't stop there. There have been so many people that have gone into reserve duty. And the conversations that I don't think get enough coverage are the small conversations on the way. For example, a friend of mine saying, I was going to have a dinner with my family, but I'm afraid to get into the car and move tomorrow. So I'm actually going to stay at home. Or a friend of mine whose husband just went up north because he's been called up into reserve duty. So I think that as we reach October 7th, every single person in this country and every single Jewish person around the world, and so many Christians that sympathize with this issue because they've been persecuted throughout the Middle East, all of these people are going to be taking October 7th really hard. And last word on that is that it's been very difficult the entire year to maintain day-to-day activities. So to come to terms with the fact that October 7th is now a year, when most of us thought that this war was going to be over within a matter of months, is going to be a solemn realization.
Yeah, normalcy is not in question. Of course, you want to get back to normal life, but on every day, you have to make some of these questions that you maybe never thought you'd have to make, the decisions you would. Let's talk about maybe what comes next, because we know October 7th is coming up very, very quickly. We've heard from Israel saying that they're going to have a response to this Iranian attack. What comes next in your eyes in terms of Israel and what the people in that nation are feeling?
I think that this attack is not going to end here. Unfortunately, we've been in this war for a year, and I have to say that for such a small country, I am actually surprised that this country has been able to carry on this war. And I think that it's a testament to the work that has been put into building this nation since 1948. To be able to financially manage a war for an entire year, to have people showing up for it, to have unity, to have even the support on the ground of volunteers that are coming together to bring food to the soldiers, from having people step in and help wives whose husbands are off to war. This is what our nation is doing to make this happen right now. So I think that the feeling is exhaustion, wishing that this is going to come to an end. Unfortunately, I don't believe that this is going to come to an end. In April, we had an attack. The players that were killed, I mean, astonishingly, Hassan Nasrallah, astonishingly, after 18 to 20 years of pursuit by multiple heads of intelligence from multiple countries, to have his removal on this week was, I'm typing the news and I'm shocked at what I'm writing with the research that I have done in the last years. So I think that this is unfortunately going to continue to unfold for quite some time.
Yeah, big developments in the last few weeks, big development today, and still more to come. I do want to ask you more about response, because you mentioned October 7th going to be a very traumatic day, an emotional day, a somber day for people in Israel, but for the Jewish community around the world, and just the perspective on the ground in Tel Aviv. How much do the people around you in Israel want other players to be involved? The United States, other countries in Europe to get more involved? Is that something from a person on the ground there that you want to see the U.S. more involved, or is it not the case?
I think that the question, sure, there are people that want other nations to understand the pursuit of a free world, which is what Israel is doing. Israel is working to create what could be a free world in the Middle East, and is not, because of players like Hassan Nasrallah that overthrew the Iranian government in 1979 and took a country that was functional and had liberties for women and turned it into a place that is run into the ground, that doesn't have a strong economy. And we see that all throughout the Middle East. So I'm not sure that the outside world quite understands how this fight affects them and affects the success of the universe, of the global economies, of global freedom.
Yeah.
That being said, Israelis are extremely pessimistic. They do not expect others to step in. And throughout this year, we've been repeatedly understanding that it is sort of Israel against the world yet again, or the Jewish community against the world yet again. That being said, I think that President Biden has done a stand-up job. Back when October 7th played out, and when I say gave a hug, I don't mean metaphoric hug. He gave victims of terror hugs and sympathized with them. Something that I think that our leadership could learn from is a series of communication that Israel has not experienced. So I think that each of the players on the world have done their role. I want to give a shout out to Jordan, which blocked Iranian missiles from coming in tonight. That's extraordinary. They've done it in the past. Yes, we have peace with Jordan on paper, but we all know that Jordan and Egypt are, while they are normalized countries with Israel, the people on the ground don't have the most friendly opinion of Israel. So there have been some really astonishing things throughout this war, like Jordan intervening, the UAE trying to make peace agreements, and of course, the United States sending carriers, which is a huge display. So I think the U.S. is doing what they need to do. A lot of people here would like to see more support, but I think that they are very used to being the ones standing on the battlefield by themselves.
That is a very good point and good perspective that, I mean, I don't think a lot of people around the world really get to see a whole lot. So it's very good that you shined a light on that. Biden, of course, continuing to say that he fully supports Israel and their right to defend themselves. Shanna Fuld, thank you so much, CEO, anchor of the Israeli Daily News podcast. I appreciate your time, your perspective. Stay safe there in Tel Aviv. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, thank you so much. All right, let's continue on here on Live Now.